Morning, Gamecock fans. Today's Tuesday, August 5th, the year of our Lord 2025, and welcome into Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Certainly happy you folks decided to join me this morning. It's Terrible Tuesday here on the Chief Sports Network, thebigspur.com, and all that good stuff. Tuesdays, as we all know, worst day of the week. Nothing good happens on a Tuesday, even in college. Yours truly like to go out and really at one point in time, just because my buddy, we called him Loud Matt. He never said anything. Great guy. We would go drink beer on Mondays just because it was Monday. What rebellious spirits we were. Karaoke Wednesday. Thursday was going out night. Friday speaks for itself. Saturday speaks for itself. Sunday, another karaoke night. Yeah, it was a long time ago. I can't hang like that anymore. But yeah, Tuesdays were always the off day. It's just like, oh, it sucks. It's Tuesday. So, in case you're wondering why, here and on the show, we talk about Terrible Tuesday. That's why. Except tacos. And have a pretty good Taco Tuesday deal at D's Wings in West Columbia, one of our sponsors. So, hats off to D's. I miss it every day, folks. Miss D's Wings every single day. Fall, excuse me, fall practice. Nothing feels, I've heard it feels pretty fall in South Carolina now. It feels pretty fall where I'm at right now. So I always call it the weather teaser in August because there's those couple of days where it kind of feels like football's coming. I always, even when I was a kid and I played, it would kind of happen in July. Practice starts soon. You kind of smell the grass and all that good stuff. But anyway, fall camp, preseason camp continues at South Carolina. Practices. We had Shane Beamer on Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show yesterday. Lots of good stuff there. You can check out that interview on our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, share, as always. And some position battles are starting to take place. I spend a lot of time talking about who I think is going to be good. And I don't in a preseason practice setting, I don't want to sit there and throw a player under the bus. So I don't really talk about, who do I think is going to be a liability or bad. That'll all come out. And there are some, question marks, obviously, when you have a bunch of new starters and a relatively young football team. I mean, Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart are the two best players. They're both, Lenore's is in his third year in college. And, that's kind of when you start to get going. Second year as a starter, though. Dylan Stewart, second year, sophomore. And we're going to talk about the 2024 class that Dylan was a part of. That's a big deal. I've kind of contended it's the best class that Beamer signed so far, and who knows, 26, 27, they all could be just as good. But it kind of reminds me of that '09 class Steve Spurrier signed. The '07 class was ranked pretty high, fourth and sixth, I think, in the country, and certainly made an impact. But that '09 class with Gilmore and Jeffrey, I mean, you kind of look at it, it's like, wow. So a lot of really good players came out of that one. And then Marcus Lattimore, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to get to that in a second. But some position battles starting to take place. I spent a lot of time talking about it. I think it's going to be good. If there's a position that you kind of look at and wonder a little bit, it's probably safety. Not nickel, but safety. And I think, I'm not really, I understand why they're leaving Jalen Kilgore at nickel. He's good, and that's an important part of the defense. And just because, Brandon Cisse can play nickel does not mean he's the best nickel for the job. And I'm not sure Jalen has been as good when he's been back at safety. Now, look, obviously, if they get into the season and that's the absolute best move, and I've seen it before, something that a lot of people are like, well, that maybe they move them or whatever, and this is to get their best players on the field, then absolutely, it'll happen. I'm not opposed to it. I just understand the thought process of, don't mess up a good thing. And if you think you have other good players, that's fine. And I think when you look at the safety battle, DQ Smith is going to start. He's Jamie Bradford's breakout player. Last year it was O'Donnell Fortune. DQ takes some heat sometimes from fans that want to put him on the bench. I get it. There's certain players we all would think should be on the bench. It happens every year. And I think part of that too is, whenever the opponent completes a pass, we're always looking at who's there around, because we're following the ball. Stephon Gilmore, I mentioned him earlier, pretty good corner, right? Well, in 2010, Carolina would give up some pretty big pass plays, and Gilmore was chasing them. But you talk to people and find out that it was a safety blowing coverage, and Gilmore was just trying to cover for him or whatever. But Stephon got blamed. Can't cover. So, that shows what we all know out here. I mean, trust me, I was kind of thinking the same thing, but then you go and you watch, and it's a little different. Um, and I'm not saying that DQ Smith. The thing about him is every other player in the secondary last year had some big plays. We've seen big plays out of DQ before, but we just didn't see many last year. It's kind of, I guess, a quiet year. I mean, he started every game but one, and he was out there, and they're really high on him being his best as a senior. Now, that's happened before? Marcellus Dial, best year last year. Cam Smith, Darius Rush, those are all corners. I mean, I think Nick Emmanwori played his best football last season, although he's played well the entire time. I mean, there's a lot of precedent for that with Torian Gray getting the most out of a veteran guy. Jalen Foster in his first year. I mean, he was a Walter Camp All-American, and people, I mean, myself included, I had serious questions. He's a Burns guy, so I always pull for him, but I was like, well, I don't know. So there is precedent here for DQ to have a great year, just in the recent history of this program, and they love him. So he's a starter at on one safety. The other one, Peyton Williams, came out of the spring ahead, and Peyton, when he's played, he's had some moments. Came in, was a late starter against Vandy last year. I thought he played exceptionally well. Almost had a pick, I think, and was physical in the run game. And that's when you're replacing Nick Emmanwori. I know we see the pick sixes and the length, and Nick ended up being an extremely intelligent safety too. I mean, if you ever listen to his interview, I've said this before on 1801 Media, where he talks about the pick six with the BS call that cost Carolina a playoff berth last year. Um, that was what was called he called it something like a in play switch. In other words, they kind of bait the quarterback, and in the middle of the play, and this Clayton White's defense, they switch. And so you're not expecting Nick to be back there, and it worked out pretty well for the Gamecocks. And you have to have a high football IQ and really be confident and good, cover a lot of ground like Nick could to do that. And sure enough, Nussmeier threw it right to him. Boom. That was when you dive into kind of the anatomy of that play, it's kind of impressive. I kind of just wish Kyle Kennard had just let Nussmeier wasn't going to make that tackle anyway. Nobody was catching him. But it's hard to blame Kyle for that, because if you look at it, it was a great acting job, Academy Award winning performance by Garrett Nussmeier. But anyway, we'll see what happens when Carolina goes to Baton Rouge this year. But Peyton Williams, when he's been in, we remember him as a freshman or young player, freshman, sophomore against Tennessee in 2022. I think he's a true freshman. Somebody got hurt, and he had to get out there against that bunch. You remember Tennessee throwing it all over the yard, had a pass breakup, and he held his own. He's from Rockwall, Texas. He's been in the program for a while. Um, you know, Probably could have gone and transferred back home to Texas and one of those schools, but loves being at Carolina. And, this is his time. It's time for him to step up and be that starter. And he did coming out of spring. I mean, he looked pretty good. Uh, then there's David Bucci. 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 I need to look up the pronunciation of that. I'm sorry. But David B. Let's just call him David B. David B, heavy hitter, very physical safety. and fast enough. Played all year last year on special teams. They love this kid. And he was a 2024 prospect as well from Savannah, just like tight end Michael Smith. Um, was not he had a player for the 2025 class, a big D tackle that Carolina was in on him early. And then I ended up at Georgia, 5-star guy. And a lot of people thought they just took David to get him, and that wasn't the case. He's a Torian Gray camp special. And I think we've all learned to appreciate those evaluations around here. But he ain't going down without a fight. I mean, that guy could end up taking the job or forcing a rotation or something like that. And in run support, which is where I think they're going to a lot miss Nick Emmanwori quite a bit. He's pretty good as well. Who wins that job ultimately? I don't know, but it's not that I don't like the safeties on the roster. Don't get it twisted, right? Because I love Kelvin Hunter too from West Florence. He's from one of the other couple of high schools in Florence, not South Florence, where the Sellers are from, but West Florence. Good hitting guy. Good hitting guy. Was a 4-star prospect. Played some early last year, and then he had an injury, ended up redshirting. But Kentucky and LSU, he got in there, made some plays. And I think he'll probably end up over on the other side with behind DQ Smith. But they're good players. Don't get me wrong. I said, gosh, in spring, who's the toughest to replace? And I said Nick. I mean, everybody is rightfully wondering about the D line talent because it's so critical and stuff like that. And then it's like, well, Torian Gray will fit. Well, whatever. He'll just do the secondary. Be careful with that because a cautionary tale. The 2018 season, probably a little bit of a disappointment relative to expectations in the preseason. Carolina was expected to contend in the East. I thought they were going to beat Georgia. Carolina just won 9 games. Muschamp took them from 3 to 6 to 9. Things were going well. Brian McClendon had a fantastic year that year as OC. Not so much the next year, but did as OC that year. It was kind of a spread attack. It made more sense than Kurt Roper. Gamecocks come out, whip Coastal Carolina in the beginning, and then all of a sudden Georgia just laid the hammer down. And that team evolved as a team because of injuries and other reasons. They just weren't very good on defense. In 2017, that's a pretty good defense. Forced a lot of turnovers. Turnovers didn't come, and you kind of look at the personnel and go, yeah, it wasn't a very good defense. Now, was it 2014 level? No. It was at the end. I mean, if you remember the Clemson game, the 56-35 game, Carolina was running walk-ons out there at the end and stuff like that. So the injuries did play a factor for that football team. But I think all summer, most of us, myself included, I'm going to be critical of yours truly on this, sat there and said, "Oh, it's Muschamp. He'll have a good defense because the 16 defense overachieved. They were a tough physical bunch. 17 was really good at forcing turnovers and all. Um, and I guess we didn't look at like, well, they're going to miss Taylor Stallworth and, DJ Wanham was hurt the whole year. And, they just didn't have a lot of depth and a lot of players and all that. And so, in that beginning, I mean, God, look at the Florida collapse on defense. They couldn't stop the run. Yeah, God, Florida ran it every play but one that time around. So, I mean, I think J.C. Horn was out there starting as a true freshman. I mean, and then in and out of the lineup, a lot of people. So that's a cautionary tale for me, maybe not y'all, but me, to not just assume, oh, this is a good coach. This guy knows what he's doing. We're not going to worry about that. I think I've been around enough to where that, the minute you do that, maybe it's superstition on my part. The minute you do that, that position becomes terrible and a huge liability. I don't think it will. I'm just saying that Nick Emmanwori is what is he? He's rare, a rare player. And that's the toughest thing to replace. Because, I mean, Kendall Daniels Jr., is built like that, and he's a true freshman. Um, is he as instinctive and good as Nick? I don't know. Probably not this year, although Nick came in and did pretty well. You kind of look Jazavian Currents in the current class, 2026 is like that. Freaky guy. That's why I like Tamarian Watkins a lot. Unfortunately, he's going to A&M. Who knows if that sticks, but we shall see. Um, and I mean Tristan Davis, or Tristan Lewis, not Davis, from Greenwood, the quarterback that they're gonna kind of. I mean, he's like that. That 6'4" rangy big guy. So they have some guys like that in the pipeline. It's just not there. So you kind of look and what Nick did for the defense last year because he's an absolute eraser. And I have seen very few 6'4" safeties get down and dirty in the run game like he could. He could hit. Very physical player. I've seen it out of Peyton Williams though. Peyton Williams isn't as big as Nick, but he can play physical, and I know David B can, and I know Kelvin Hunter can. He'll knock you into next week. So it is sort of a physical group. DQ Smith's a very physical player. Can they cover? Would be a question. Like I said, I've seen it out of Peyton Williams. I think DQ Smith, you don't want to get him matched up 1-on-1 with a speedy receiver like Mississippi State did a few years ago when he was playing nickel. I think he was playing nickel or whatever, but I think he can cover just fine. I think he's if he has this breakout year, that'd be great. Big play DQ, right? But if you're kind of looking at a spot where you go, well, they got to figure some things out, and there's a lot of it's like at linebacker. I've talked a lot about how I'm high on the linebackers. Well, it's because you've got these freaky athletes and good players there. I mean, two of them, Sean Murphy and Justin O, were evaluated and recruited by Nick Saban in Alabama. I mean, that's he doesn't miss often. He's missed before, but he doesn't miss often. And you look at the measurables and you hear the reports about what Sean Murphy's done and coming into his own maturity wise, leadership wise. And you like that. I mean, you look on the interior of the defensive line, another Nick Saban recruit. You got Monkel Goodwine, Nick Barrett. Looks like he's taken a big step. Yeah, I mean, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy is maybe the top jumbo athlete on the entire roster and one of the best in the country. He's just got to get meaner. At end, you still have JT, you still have Desmond Umazulu. Brian Thomas Jr. is having a good camp. Corner, we've talked about, corner and nickel. But that safety position, you think, well, it's probably Peyton Williams and DQ Smith, and definitely DQ. But David B's is competing, Kelvin's competing. So, and you have to replace an absolute freak. I mean, TJ Sanders, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, Taki Hemingway had great years last year. Were huge. It's tough to production wise, but it's not out of the question that another defensive tackle can do what TJ did last year. I don't know if they will individually because TJ was awfully good. But, Tonka Hemingway is a little more rare. They don't really have a Tonka Hemingway until Aiden Harris gets here. But, he's got some rarity to him. Kyle Kennard, was just super productive and blew up his final year. So you look at all those guys, and Demetrius Knight, same way. I mean, they weren't necessarily the most. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say, well, you can find another guy like that or like that, like that. I'm just saying if you get players with talent to play at a high level, you can replicate that. How are you going to replicate Nick Emmanwori right now? Unless it's Kendall Daniels. I mean, and I'm not saying all 6'4" safeties are alike because they're not. But and that's another thing about Nick is it's like, well, wow. And maybe it's just the bowl game too, because whereas Peyton Williams getting thrown out there, did well against Vandy, well against Tennessee. We've seen him in spurts. I think in the bowl game, and it's probably because of how it went down. They missed Nick. I mean, Illinois kept the ball the whole fourth quarter. So, maybe it's an off day. I don't want to hang that on Peyton Williams, but we'll see how that unfolds. So, I spend a lot of time talking about who I think is going to be good. and not a lot of time talking about question marks. To me, safety is kind of in that question mark range right about now, but we'll see how it comes out. But there is a battle taking place over there. So the 2024 class, let's check in on this. I've said a lot of times I think it's Beamer's best class. I felt like kind of in the middle of last year, and it's not just because of Dylan Stewart. I looked around and looked back at the class and was like, wow, this is not a big class at all. There's only 11 guys left. But you look, and these are some dudes, and they're all going into their second year. And most coaches will tell with the exception of offensive line, but there is one offensive lineman, or two that are left from that class, um, which is more your third year, maybe quarterback at times. But first to second year, you take a big jump forward. And the guys that enrolled not early at Carolina last spring, not the one for this season, but for 2024. They've been through a spring, they've been through an off season. It's you can develop quite a bit first to second season. And then there's already a lot of players that played last year, quite a bit, and not only played but made an impact. So is this going to be the class that kind of lays that foundation like '09 and kind of gets this thing going to the next level? It could happen. I think when you're talking about impact of a total class, eh, there's two things that stand out. The first thing is I think recruiting, although there's like money involved now, and that's a factor, probably more than it should have been with the high school class this time around. Though, stay tuned for the Amari Thomas and Darius Gray announcements, right? Coming up. Um, there's more money. The money situation is a little more. I mean, I think Carolina is competitive there. They're not going to overpay for high school talent. It's just not something that they're going to do. It has to be a real special player for them to do it. And I don't blame them because it's developmental, like I just said. But with money involved and stuff, there obviously are a lot of different things that play a factor in recruiting. But I think that it's still when you're winning and things are going well, and your coach is not on some stupid hot seat list. And I don't know that Beamer was after 2023, but another losing season, and it kind of collapses as far as that talk goes, because these are still high school kids. Parents are still involved. They don't. That's kryptonite. I mean, we remember the Spurrier 2 or 3 years thing. They want to know their coach is going to be there. Stability. Recruiting decisions are based on comfort level, and the quickest way to wreck the comfort level is to say the coach ain't going to be there because you don't know who's coming in. And that's important, right? You don't know their staff. You don't know who you're going to be dealing with. It's an unknown. There's a good example of that last year. Florida had a really good recruiting class when all is said and done. It did not start well. And they flipped maybe double-digit players. Well, the reason was most of those kids wanted to go to Florida anyway. They were going to commit to Florida, but Billy Napier was on the hot seat all year until they came out and said he's coming back, and they were like, all right, I want to be in. So that's an example outside of South Carolina to say that. So Carolina, they took advantage of the hot finish in 2022 and got a lot of these guys committed up early. I mean, Dylan Stewart was committed way before 2023 season happened. I mean, it was fantastic, a fantastic start. A smaller class guy. They flipped Mazio Bennett once Dowell Loggins was hired. They ended up winning a battle for Blake Franks, but then the 2023 season happened, and you had a lot of disgruntled Gamecock fans, social media. I mean, things were not great, right? After a 5-7 year where, they finished pretty well, still missed a bowl, lost the Clemson game, blah, 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 blah. But they held it together. The class, I mean, Michael Smith, Tennessee and Auburn were knocking down his door. They did hold on to Wendell Gregory. He's not there anymore, but same with him, the two Georgia kids that committed early. So they held it together. They kept Dylan Stewart. They kept Josiah Thompson. Alabama was kind of sniffing around on him. Fred Johnson. They had to go to the mat with Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech actually had some momentum at the time. Keep him in state. Pretty good thing that Matt Fuller played for Jabo Shaw, Connor's brother, and also that people do recruiting earlier because Matt Fuller had such a great senior season. I don't know. There could have been a flip. I know Georgia Tech probably or did sniff around, but everybody stayed. Everybody stayed, and these guys, a lot of them enrolled early, and so yeah, that was a good. It's hard to do that, especially these days, because you throw the money on top of everything else, and it's like, well, who knows? So they did a great job, fantastic job, and these guys made an immediate impact. And I'll just go through it, talk a little bit about where they stood last year and where they're going this year. And it starts with Dylan Stewart, obviously, All American freshman. Some of his plays, week 2 against Kentucky, even week 1, got out there, went viral. It was kind of sad. Some of the media, like legit media people, were talking about him getting in the portal right away, like as if South Carolina plays, division, group of 5 football and doesn't have any financial resources. It sucked. I got that ticked me off worse than anything, because I just don't think, I don't like it when outside influences that they're not related to the situation, and this includes agents. They insert themselves into the situation. I've said many times about that agency that was bragging in an article. His agent was bragging, well, our guys were a little hesitant to get in the portal first time around, but we talked them into it second time around. I was like, well, they were probably hesitant because they're happy where they are. Leave them alone. These aren't pros. I don't care how many times people want to make it. These are college kids. I mean, you're impacting their lives. And look, that can work both ways. Impacting, money can impact your life pretty frequently or pretty strongly. So I get that. But when you're just blanket telling people to get in the portal and go test the waters, I mean, some coaches don't. If you get in the portal, you're out. Period. We don't want you. I think South Carolina's like that too. I mean, you have to kind of ask to come back. And what if they don't get as much? What if they don't? I mean, so I don't like that. And I don't like the media, especially, if it's a group of 5 player or something. Yeah, okay. The G5 schools, with the exception of maybe Memphis, they can't pay. You're looking to increase your exposure. So yeah, okay. That kind of speculation from the media is part of the job. But to do that to an SEC program 2 games into the season is BS. I cuss enough on the show or let dirty words fly on the show sometimes. So I'm going to try to not do it on coffee. So I hated that. Dylan had a great year. I think he's going to be even better this season. All-American candidate. Josiah Thompson really encouraged that Shane Beamer at a press conference the other day, and this maybe got lost. And we forget about Josiah Thompson sometimes, that he was a 5-star prospect, a top 3 offensive tackle in America. Dillon High School, started most games last year. But Beamer went out of his way to praise this guy and said, he's put on the weight. It's been a journey to get him a little bigger, and he did need to get bigger. He's over 300 pounds. I think he's around like 308, 310. Probably played at about 285, 290 last year during the season, listed at 300. But man, if he can, Beamer said he's developed. Well, if he can take a step forward, he was one last year for you graded him on a curve. True freshman out there in the SEC, very good for that. If you graded him on a curve, you compare him to some of the other left tackles in the SEC, up and down. So I hope with new strength and all that it ends up that he is way more consistent, which is kind of the theme of the offensive line in general. But left tackle absolutely is important. That is, if Tree doesn't beat him out. I said that the other day before I kind of thought about it. Going to be hard for Tree to do that, especially if Thompson's taking a step forward. If he gets on the field and he hadn't, maybe you see Tree at left tackle. But Josiah is a player, I think, as long as, he continues his path. I mean, this guy, I mean, it's legit. And you don't think about it. We talk about the offensive line all the time. There are battles on the interior. The interior is probably going to end up being 20, 30 pounds heavier on average on the inside. I think that's a good thing, although bigger is not always better. But, and then there's all this talk about right tackle because Casey Henry is sort of in the DQ Smith club with some fans. And this battle, that could be if develop it as a battle. It has nothing to do with Kaysen and everything, maybe to do with Tree and how good he is. Just like last year, Torricelli Simpkins played over Baugh, who by the way is having a good go of it, and this is because he was better after, even though Baugh started the year before. But we forget about Josiah Thompson. We just assume. And that, like I said earlier, it gets you in trouble. But very encouraged to hear that. Michael Smith, Joe, go read John Whittle's article with quotes from Sean Elliott on Michael Smith on thebigspur.com. Elliott does not go out of his way to praise a player for blocking and things like that if the dude's not doing it. He'll say something like, well, he just needs to work on this. I mean, he's not going to throw people under the bus because he loves his players, but Elliott straight up said he's an everything tight end. If you want to line up and run power with him, you can. That's exciting because I think sometimes, based on his high school film, because he's kind of a big wide receiver in high school. Freshman year, there's obviously some blocking stuff with the tight ends, but takes a step forward in the physicality department. We know he's explosive. We know he's got good hands. Michael Smith, I've talked him up, and he's another guy maybe we forget about. Jalua Solomon, a really big recruiting win, beat Auburn, came back the next year. He's at corner. I don't know if they'll look at him at safety or with Zabari Sandy out at nickel. Maybe he slides in as that backup nickel, although Cisse could go there as well. Probably a year away, Jalewis is. And it's because of the talent in front of him. Now, there's always injuries and things like that, so we could very well see him on the field, but special teams, and he's doing fine. It's just Carolina's got really good cornerbacks, and he's going into his second year. So looking forward to seeing him on the field more. Fred Johnson, I can't talk enough about Fred Johnson. He was in this class, so that's 5 guys. Mazio Bennett is the next guy. 4-star kid from Greenville High School, led South Carolina in receptions last year, has gotten significantly better during this all season. Some say Brad Crawford even thinks he's going to be the breakout receiver this year. My answer to that is I don't know. Breakout receiver. Yeah, I can tell you who I like. I'll say one. I like the potential of Nick Harbor. I like the freaky athleticism. I love slot receivers that can run, that can also jump. I was a big Shy Smith guy. I like that about Brian Rowe. And a guy that could come out of nowhere to me is Vendrevius Jacobs because he's put in the work and gotten significantly better as well. Doesn't mean I don't like Mazio Bennett. Certainly I do. Reminds me of Kenny McKinley. A lot of people make that comparison. I think I made it. The late, great Kenny McKinley. Just got quick, shifty hands. Just like with all the other receivers, yards after catch need to get better. So we'll see what happens with that. But Mazio, part of this class, flipped him from Tennessee. I mentioned Kelvin Hunter earlier with the safety talk. 4-star guy from Florence. He's in this class. I mentioned Matt Fuller. He was in this class. Blake Franks, offensive lineman. Again, kind of like Jalewis, it's who's in front of him. But I had a chance to see Blake Franks at the wing eating contest this summer. He looks like $1 million. Big, long-armed, physical kid. Not a lot of fat on him. Just he keeps working and doing it to it. He's also from Greenville High. You haven't heard. Don't get it twisted that Blake Franks isn't going to be a player here. As long as he sticks with it. Obviously kids hit the portal. I mentioned David B. He was in this class, and then Mason Love. I'm not going to talk about special teams. It's 11 days now before kickoff instead of 10 because I got to have a colonoscopy 10 days before kickoff. So I will be out. I think we'll have a coffee that day, but there's going to be no show. I'll have my annual freak out about special teams. Maybe I may be justified this year. But Mason had a really good spring punting the ball and also could end up being the place kicker when all is said and done. So that's 11 guys. I don't think I mentioned, but a handful that may not be in the two deep, maybe just two. Jalewis Solomon and Blake Franks. Well, Matt Fuller may not be in the actual two deep. I feel like he'll play. I think he's good. But the rest of them are going to make a significant impact for a class that's in its second year out of school. And I didn't even talk about the transfer portal guys for 2024 because a lot of those guys are gone. I mean, Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight, part of that class. 2024 was a heck of a recruiting year. Rocket Sanders was in the 2024 class, technically. They have lost some players. DeBron Gatling, wide receiver, a kid that was committed to A&M that they signed late. He left and went to Georgia Tech. I mentioned Wendell Gregory, Oklahoma State. Dante Reno, a quarterback who really owe a debt of gratitude to because he helped put that class together. He transferred back to play for his father at Yale. And then Cam Pringle, big early recruiting win out of Woodland. He left and went to Syracuse. And there's Zach Rice, 5-star guy in the class for North Carolina a few years ago out of Lynchburg, Virginia. Big guy like Cam Pringle needed to reshape. So he's there too. So I'm curious to see with Fran Brown's team this year how those two big guys that left North and South Carolina end up competing in the ACC. But with Pringle, I think maybe it was impatience for playing time, maybe a little bit of money. Syracuse sometimes can pay. Like in the portal, sometimes it's one man's trash, another man's treasure. Pringle didn't project to be in the two deep this year. Carolina's not going to write him a big check. He could be good. I mean, he's not a lock to be great either. Same thing with Wendell Gregory. I mean, it kind of stunk because I think he's got natural pass rushing skills, but Oklahoma State probably willing to pay him a little more and got in the portal in the middle of spring ball. So that was those are the two right there. Gatling, we'll see what he does at Georgia Tech. Everybody's ACC sleeper pick this year. Certainly hope the Jackets do have a good season. I like their coach and I like Haynes King and all that. And then Reno went back to Yale. Thought he's going to go to App State for a while, but went back to Yale to play for his dad. Dante's a really good person and will always be a Gamecock. So look, 2024 impact class could be, shaping up to be, I guess, projecting to be one of the most significant in program history as long as the Gamecocks future seasons unfold like they can. A lot of talent there. Small but mighty class. And hey, 2026 could be the same thing because it's not a terribly huge class either. And if Carolina can do what they did in the portal in 24, I think they did a good year in the portal in 25 too. But their normal portal efforts, 26 could be another good group of future Gamecocks heading to Columbia. So 2024 class, keep an eye on those folks. I'll probably do this every year as long as they're here. As long as it's intact, I've said this before, but I really think you look at how it unfolded, you look at weathering the adversity to get the class in, and then you look at the talent. I mean, my goodness, they have some bona fide stars, already proven stars, and then guys that I think will be breaking out very, very soon. All right, Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show. Today, it's Terrible Tuesday. Like I said, John Strickland. On the morning show, though, it's Talking Ball Tuesday. John Strickland, former Gamecock captain. I know John's fired up. Strick is fired up about football season. Ready to roll with him today. Mike Morgan and the co-host. And then we'll have the show, Terrible Tuesday again. Nana Sports Chat Box, VHS dates, the poll du jour, which we'll talk about rankings. Got a lot to say about some of these rankings today. Uh, the AP voters and a lot of things like that. Make it a little fired up. But we'll discuss all that, myself and the Mad Dog and all the Nana Sports chat boxers and Club Chief. If you'd like to join Club Chief, you can join right here on YouTube. Have access to exclusive access to the Nana Sports chat box for all our shows. JC and Morgan tomorrow morning, kind of simulcasted with the morning show. Andy Staples from On Three will join us. Guy, a guy that does his own polling and stuff, and that should be a great conversation with Andy. I always look forward to catching up with him. Andy played for Steve Spurrier at Florida, so not that you have to play to be credible, but Andy's got some really great takes. Yeah, you never agree with everything everybody says, but great takes, and also loves barbecue. So very entertaining guest tomorrow, JC and Morgan. Check that out. And then it's wide open Wednesday in the Nana Sports chat box tomorrow. You don't have to be a member on Wednesdays. And so holla at some of you guys then. This has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Talk to you soon. Holla.